Hey everybody, we're here with the Dirt Trail Running Podcast. I'm Coach Loretta, and I'm here today with Sam Stimac and Coach Reese. So welcome everybody. I'm really super excited about this show because we were just talking, and I met Sam back in probably around 2020, her first year of doing 100, and I started coaching her. So I've been coaching her on and off for the last few years. And I had the privilege of coaching her this year to UTMB 100, which I was super excited when she called and asked for some support again. So we're going to talk a little bit with Sam today about that adventure. And before we move any farther, I want to say happy birthday to Coach Reese. So it's his birthday
Yeah, thanks.
today. So everybody send him like inundate him with birthday wishes today.
Thanks. By the time this podcast comes out, I might be 30 years old and a few weeks.
Oh, there you go. 30. You're the big 30. I didn't realize
Yeah.
this.
So, yeah, it made it very real when I saw my ultra sign up category change from 20 to 29 to 30
Oh,
to
yeah,
39.
you got a new age group.
So, I'm coming for a new age group.
Oh, that's awesome. So, Reese, do you want to kick us off with some questions? Talking with Sam and
Yeah, totally. Sam, I really want to get into UTMB, but I think for the listeners that aren't familiar with you, myself included, because this is our first time meeting. So I guess I should start off by saying it's wonderful to meet you and get to talk with you for the hour. So thank you for spending it with us.
Thank you
Um,
for having me.
but a lot of people don't like bragging about themselves. So I think I'll brag about you for a little bit, just from what I can see on Ultra Sign Up. You just had a win at Musalamu, Ultra 36 miler. You're it seems like you're always within like the top few, at least podium, at the different races that you're in. Catamount Ultra, you did very well at the Supany Scramble, had a win. Let's see, had another win at Mount Toby Trail Race. You've raced at the Canyons Endurance Run, and now UTMB. So, I mean, like, you have such a great racing resume at various distances and various terrains and whatnot. So can you kind of tell us, like, what got you into ultra running and how your trajectory has come across the years through racing?
Yeah, I have always been a runner since I was, in like middle school. I think I started cross country, but and then I into adulthood, I ran like a few marathons, and I didn't like love them. But I watched the Barkley Marathons documentary in grad school, and ever since then, that night I signed up for my first 50K, and it kind of has spiraled from there. I knew while I was watching that documentary, I was like, I want to do at least 100 miles. Um, so then that kind of started in 2018, 19, and I signed up for my first 100, and it was 2020. So, didn't happen until 2021. And that's when I met Loretta to kind of guide me into the 100-mile world. So, yeah.
yeah, and the thing that's fun has been watching Sam kind of grow as an athlete. So when we first started, she was living, I think, in Wisconsin. So she's
Yeah.
actually originally from Wisconsin and has moved about to be have some time in the mountains through her journey as well. But when I first met her, I think the biggest weakness was probably nutrition in a run, wouldn't you say?
For sure. I was drinking for I remember my first 50 miler, I was drinking water and Coke and some fruit snacks,
Yes.
and it was not much. And then I, of course, felt horrible, but I was like, this is still so fun. So,
I remember that, and I remember like giving you some suggestions, and then you trying them, and you're like, "Oh my gosh, this is like so much better." My
yep.
mom doesn't have to pick me up after a long run.
Yep.
Oh my gosh, I remember finding that out about running too. It's like, oh yeah, you can either do this 20 miler at, just on like water and peanuts, or if you fuel well, you can actually like push through the end and still have a day afterwards. I feel like that's like the biggest thing that like once athletes like figure that out, where it's like, oh, if I fuel right, then like I don't have to take like a 3 hour nap after my run. It's like game changing.
It's amazing.
For sure.
So, Sam, I'd like to kind of recap UTMB with you. I'd love to hear about your experience there. Just like overall thoughts, how European racing is different than US racing, and just how the race unfolded for you before we kind of get into like how you trained for it being here stateside.
Yeah. So UTMB was the coolest race I've ever done.
Mm.
It was, I would say, a very kind of like it was just a really cool experience, mainly because my kind of story is it starts from Canyon's 100K in 2023, which is where I automatically qualified for CCC. And I had trained all summer, like huge training, and then I got Lyme disease and I could not run CCC. So that was a year ago. And it was really hard because we paid for the trip. So we went and like experienced UTMB, but I couldn't run. So it was kind of a bummer, but we learned a lot about crewing and navigating the whole situation because my husband was my crew, and I think he was more nervous for like CCC than anything. So coming into it this year, we did things a little differently. We like stayed out of Chamonix the first few days, just because it's such a wild, it's so cool, but it's also just like so stimulating. So, but the race itself was just incredible. The crowds, the vibes are just like the most amazing thing in the world. It's like you see those pictures of like Courtney Dauwalter with like tons of people around her, like going up these climbs, and it's like I was not up there, but we were like people were still like that for like not just the lead. So it was just like it was just super cool. Everybody was stoked to be there because it's just an iconic race. Yeah. What
Oh,
else?
that's so much fun. And I always forget too, like whenever I think of UTMB, like I think that everybody knows what we're talking about, but like some quick stats on UTMB, like it's over 100 miles long. I think it's like 107. It's got over 37,000 or over 30,000 feet of elevation gain over that 107 miles. So it is a burly course. For anybody that's looking at the profile, I mean, it goes through 3 different countries. It goes through Switzerland, France, Italy, and you have at least what 5, 6, 7 extremely notable climbs that go up like a couple thousand feet a piece. So it is a true like mountaineering style ultra race. So to have such like crowd enthusiasm pushing on the runners at various points in the climbs, I feel like would be pretty foreign to most of us. A lot of us are used to grassroots ultras where a lot of times you see your crew like once a loop or so, or you might see crew in aid stations and whatnot. But I'm sure the energy from the crowd just pumped you up.
Oh yeah, it was so cool. And then there's like the classic, which I've seen, online going into it, but it's like in the middle of nowhere. There's like all these like colored rings, and it's nighttime, and you're like running through them, and it's kind of bizarre because you're like, this is not we're in the middle of the mountains, but it was yeah, super cool. And European racing is different because like there's no pacers, which this is my first 100 mile without a pacer. So that was definitely something I was nervous about. But the fact that no one else has pacers, you're just like, we're in it together, so.
Mm-hmm. And I've always heard too at the start of UTMB, it's like it is a mad dash right from the get-go. Like take us through the beginning portions of UTMB, say like getting straight off of the line, going up to the first climb. I'm not even going to try to pronounce what the first climb's name is, but it's about like 1,000 meters or so, like
Yeah.
straight up.
Yeah, so the start, I was fortunate enough to be in the elite wave. So like people get to the start line. I've heard people get there like 2 hours early because, it's in they're tiny little streets. So people are just like, they're super early. I got there like 30 minutes early because I got access to the front of the line, which was super cool. But with that being said, it's like they kind of line you up according to your UTMB index. But with the elite women, we're ahead of a lot of guys that are faster than us. So it's kind of scary. Like I was standing next to a few women that had run it before, and they're like, be careful, like they are going to trampede you. So it was like kind of scary at first, and it's just there's again so many crowds, especially those first few miles. It's all on roads, and just thrones of people are just all through the streets. And it is good. The first few miles are on the road, so it doesn't really spread out that much, but it is like a little bit of a spread before you're just in single track climbing a single track trail up a mountain where there's not a lot of passing that can be done. Yeah, and it starts at 6 p.m., which is interesting. So, going into the first night with high energy is very cool. Yeah.
Wonderful. How did it feel starting at night? I mean, that's something that's super foreign to like us. A lot of our races start at like 6, maybe 7 o'clock in the morning if you're lucky. But did you notice anything different? Like the first thing that comes to my mind is for anybody with pre-race nerves, it might be you might have a little bit easier time sleeping or at least sleeping in.
Yeah, that was one of the things I was most nervous about was the 6 p.m. start time. And I tried to sleep in the best as I could, but like it's so exciting. And then during the day, I kind of just relaxed. I tried to take a nap. But I was kind of nervous about the food because it's like I kind of have my like morning food down, but like having a few meals is a lot different than just like your breakfast that you would normally have before one of our morning races. Um, but honestly, it went pretty good for me. So I'm like, dang, I don't know.
How did you prepare for that in training too? Did you go out for like 6 p.m. runs? What did it look like?
I would say not, I mean, I work really long days, so like I end up running at night frequently. So that's just like kind of in my current routine, not so much for long runs, but I know previously for like my first 100 and stuff, I did do some night runs to prepare, but I haven't really done a ton of those.
What's your daytime profession?
I'm a physical therapist and I specialize in neuro, so people with neurologic dysfunctions, stuff like that.
Oh, that's great. That's very holistic in the sense of being an athlete, being a PT, like living your passions and working your passions too. Um, so what is the speed of movement like at UTMB? Like I'd imagine, like being a coach, being in Loretta's shoes, you gotta think about, okay, are we gonna be running a lot of this race? Are we gonna be running the downhills? Are we gonna be running the uphills? What are things gonna look like? Before we get into the like training for that, like what actually happened on race day? How did you find your flow when you were out on the trails?
Um, I think I was there's as I said, there's like a ton of lead up to this race, and I was so thankful just to be on the start line and healthy that my first goal was to finish and like soak it up. And I think I
Mhm.
successfully did that until the last like 10 miles were brutal. But like overall, like I had some like my stomach issues throughout, and there's a lot of things I could have improved upon for sure. I think I went a little too conservative at times, just because it was a really daunting feat. Um,
Mhm.
but overall, I was just so thankful to be there and healthy and like feeling strong after the year prior. So I think that's what I'm most proud about is just like trying to be in the moment. And I did that until the last climb and the last descent were pretty rough, but I think everybody was in the same boat. Which yeah.
And
So
it was not only your probably one of your most difficult races, it was one of your longest races, being that it was like 107 miles too.
yeah, and according to my watch, it was 109, but and this is the longest. It was longer because they change the course a little bit every year. So, and it was the longest one they've had. So, um, yeah. So, uh, overall, I'm really happy with the race, how it went. I think there's definitely areas to improve upon, but after the last year, again, I was just thankful to be able to finish it and feel pretty strong throughout it and know like there's definitely areas where I'm like, I could have gone faster there, or, nutrition definitely can always be improved upon for myself at least.
hmm And I think the thing that I hear about that race too is that like since there is so much elevation, like you're not quite at the highest altitudes, right? Like it's not like a Leadville where you hover between 10 and 14,000 feet, but it's what more in the like 7 to 12,000 foot or so. So it definitely gets up there. Maybe not quite as much, but I feel like it's a slower race just because there's so much climbing, right? So there's 100 milers like Hennepin that just happened, right? That like,
Yeah.
like can be done within like tens of hours, whereas UTMB, like the finisher field, like top of the field is coming in at like 19, 20, 21, 22. Top of the female field is right around there too. Forgive me for forgetting what Courtney's record is, but I mean, regardless, it is just a long 100-mile race with all of the elevation too. So how did you rationalize that in your head, like at the start line, knowing, hey, I got a long day ahead of me?
Again, I think I was excited to spend a long time on my feet. I hadn't done 100-mile in over a year, over a year, just because I had a really rough year. So I was really stoked to see what I could do, push myself. And for 100, it's like, for me at least, I look forward to seeing my crew. So I knew exactly when I would see it. I only had Andrew, my husband, with me, and I was like, I knew exactly when I was going to see him. So it's just kind of like counting down to that. But also just trying to soak in this like crazy, beautiful, amazing experience
Mhm.
at the same time. So
The thing is,
yeah.
Reese, about Sammy is one thing that's the one thing I love about coaching her is she loves being out and just playing in the mountains. I mean, it's like one of the things she just loves to do. So it's great coaching her because I can use that because that's definitely her strength. And then also another piece that we didn't share, she was married very shortly before this. So now she has Andrew crewing her race first time as her husband, which is kind of cool. So she just had so many magical things happening. I think that it was just such an amazing journey for her.
For sure. We got married the Saturday before UTMB. So it was just like a crazy time that was really special. So
Wow, jam-packed. And I bet too the emotions of just actually being at the start line, especially a year after already planning to be there. I can kind of empathize on one hand, just missing like Kettle this past year, where it's like when you think you're going to be someplace and you are there and you're watching all the people that you wanted to, like line up against, like go by. Well, it's an amazing experience spectating. But of course, like us runners want to go like run the course, and knowing like how detrimental Lyme's disease can be. Yeah, I could imagine just lining up, but the year afterwards, it kind of made it all worth it, especially with the excitement of being married and having your crew there and your people and being able to start that adventure. So when you were experiencing those low moments, like what exactly happened? Like give us some war stories. Like what were you thinking? What happened? What got you out of it?
yeah, I would say by far my worst struggles, and I think that's pretty common for me at least, and I'm still just trying to work through it, is nutrition and like throwing up and not getting calories to stay down. And it's hard. I think the more you do these, the more you realize too that like, okay, you have to get calories in and things will likely turn around. So it's like, you just need to get through this. So like my mantra is like, just keep moving, try to get in what you can get in. But there was um like two moments in particular where I was not like, I was throwing up and I was like, I still try to keep moving even if I'm, getting sick or whatever. But I like had texted my best friend and Andrew and was like, FYI, I'm fine, but I'm gonna sit on a rock for a few minutes because I think I need to sit down. Like I need to try to get some food in me. And my body is not wanting to move forwards right now. So I texted both of them and they both were very supportive and they're like, you're fine, like take the time you need. But the last climb up to the last summit was just brutal and everybody was struggling. So I think that's really hard sometimes when everybody's struggling, whereas in an ultra, it seems like one person, like you'll be struggling and somebody else is doing great. And you see that like difference between people and you're like, oh, I can get back to there. But this climb, everybody was miserable. So it was just like, we're all just wanting to be done by this point. So yeah, that was by far my worst moment.
What was it like coming out of that and then finishing the race?
um, Good. it was still, honestly, it was kind of a struggle because that was at like mile. My worst point was at mile. It was like 102. So you're almost there. And I'm like sitting on a rock throwing up. So it was like, Sam, 7 miles. Like you do this, you can do this. This is nothing. And it was the longest 7 miles ever. So, and you also, it's hard to explain, but when you start coming down from the summit, it's really technical. And like I had been awake for, a long time. So I didn't really trust my feet super a ton. And you're coming down this climb and you think you see Chamonix, but it's actually a different city. And then you turn and you're like in Chamonix, but I didn't know that. And I was getting frustrated, which I like am a pretty bubbly person and can normally, even if things are rough, like I can be like, I can kind of just like, you know, put those dark thoughts aside. And I remember, I think I called Andrew and was like, I'm supposed to be 2 miles from the finish, and I see this Chamonix is like 4 miles away at least. Like the lights and like it's tiny. And he's like, Sam, like the tracker shows you're so close. But I didn't believe it. And I was just like, this is horrible. But so that was brutal.
I think we've all been there where it's like, like
Yeah,
your GPS is off by only like 1 or 2 miles and you're just like, you've already been out for such a long time. Like maybe you're
yep,
slightly bonky, like you're ready to be done. And it's just like day ending. Like I couldn't imagine because visually you're looking and you're like, oh my gosh, the confirmation is I think that's Chamonix, like way out in the
yep,
distance. I thought I only had a little bit more to go. Like what's going on? Is my watch wrong? Like
yep.
all of that too. Like,
Yeah,
yeah,
and it's
that's
the way it goes. It's like then you like turn around a corner and you're like right in the middle of downtown. It's crazy, and you're just like, what in the world? After like I just was completely spazzing out. I was like, oh my gosh, everything hurts. My stomach is not well. Like,
so you cross the line. So you met your husband at the end too, right? Gave
yep.
you a big hug. What's it like once you finish the race? Like what did you do immediately afterwards?
Um, I sat down. And also like there was a few people that were finishing around me that we had obviously run several miles with, so it's really fun to see and stay and cheer on some of those people that you're all battling with, just trying to survive this brutal thing. So that was it was really cool. I finished at like 2:30 in the morning, so like
Mhm.
it was pretty quiet around Chamonix. There was like the finish line, it was quiet because there's like a no or a sound, like they don't want it to be really loud at night, which is good. So it's pretty chill when like I finished. So we pretty much went home and went to bed, but then the next day it's like you wear your like UTMB finisher thing and you just feel really cool because it's like everybody's wearing them and it's just such a special place and time.
Oh, that's great. Well, congratulations on your finish. Congratulations on like getting through some like mental demons and for pushing through those nutritional issues that were going on. Um, Coach Loretta, I kind of want to talk with you now, like getting into some of Sam's training going into UTMB. So kind of give us a little bit of like background on like when you initially found out that Sam was going to be running and you had to help train or identify different strategies to get her through a European race and to get her through terrain that like, you know, one could argue we don't have here in the US. I would like to argue differently, but right, it's always different when you can't get on course and when you can't recce an area. So like what was that conversation like between you, Sam, and then what were you thinking about her training going in?
Right. So actually, Sam had so she had come off Lyme's disease. She had a bit of an injury that she had come off over the last year or so. And so when she, came to me and wanted me to help her go to UTMB, like the top thing between both of us was we need to get you to the start line healthy and the finish line healthy. I mean, that's most important, right? And so I knew that we needed to be really careful with her volume as we built her up to this, and we didn't have a lot of time. And it wasn't that Sam wasn't training when she came in, it was just that she was also being very conservative, building to be ready for this event. So first of all, I brought Dr. Liesel onto our team. I really wanted her to take a look at Sam, and so we could develop an individualized strength and mobility program just for her, knowing all of her background. Liesel had worked with her throughout the last year or so, I think, and giving her some suggestions as well. And so she knew her well, and she knew how she moved, and so that was our very first thing, was making sure she was healthy. And so we developed. She had a program also that you were doing from a PT that you were working with. Is that right? A strength program or mobility?
Writing my own strengths, but I was lifting regularly.
Okay, yeah. So she had some of that, but then we were like, okay, let's make it specific to her body and the course that she's going to be tackling, to make sure she would be strong for the climbs and strong for the descents. So that was our biggest thing that we started out with. And then we looked at her plan and like, okay, we know that going into this mountain race, there's going to be a lot of hiking, right? So I want to make you the best hiker that we can. So you can move quickly up this mountain and down this mountain. So she lives in Vermont, near the White Mountains. So that was a bonus right there. So we had time, for doing that. And she'd also started to taking up a little bit of gravel riding with her husband. So like, okay, let's see how we can build gravel riding, a lot of hiking, and some running and strength training into our plan. And that's what we did. We really balanced it with all of that. So we were able to, I think, probably keep her. And also because I have worked with Sam for quite a while, I kind of knew where her sweet spot was for amount of volume, because we've played with that before. Like, okay, what is that sweet spot? What's too much? What's not enough? Right. So I think overall probably her running volume was a little bit lower than we've had in the past, but a total volume with hiking and with gravel riding and all of the strength was probably pretty similar. Would you say, once we blended it all together?
Yeah, I think time-wise, I was probably putting in, about the same.
Yep. Yeah, I think so too. So we took advantage of the day, building in some power hiking on the treadmill, because that was something that she could do during the day. I mean, that is also the thing we looked at, is her work schedule, because she has a busy work schedule, and what days does she have off, and what days can she squeeze in a little bit of power hiking midday, because that was the next step. First we started out with some volume and slowly increasing, and then we moved with a elevation goal. Like, okay, this is your weekly elevation target. We're going to look at your elevation that you're doing with your hiking, with your running, with your gravel riding, and blending that together. So a lot of her back-to-back long days either included a big hike up the mountain. One day what was the hike that you did?
The Presidential Traverse is like,
Yes.
it's like a famous 19-mile traverse out here. And you go up a bunch of presidential mountains, which was fun.
She was almost blown off the mountain at the top.
It was very windy.
It is supposed to be like one of the most dangerous ones, right? Because of the wind.
Yeah, Mount Washington. Yep.
Yeah.
And it's full winter up there right
Sam
now.
is super brave, so she'll go and she'll tackle these. And that was the other way we built her plan, was doing what she loved. So that was something that was kind of on her list, was that presidential hike. So we're like, okay, when can we build this in? And I'm like, Sam, just go play in the mountains. Just take the day and just play. And then the next day might be a long gravel ride, so that she was still working on her climbing legs, and it was kind of her back-to-back, days. And so that seemed to work really well for her. And luckily, through the entire plan, I don't think you had any pain, did you? I don't think we had any issues. So, so with that, we let that guide our increasing of intensity and volume as she built up. But along the way, she also needed some confidence, right? Because she had been out for over a year with having issues and being able to finish, because of the Lyme's disease and with the other injury that she was battling. So we built in some runs. She already had a race planned. Oh shoot, what's the name of that race in
Quebec?
Yeah, Quebec. Yes.
Yeah, so Quebec Mega Trail.
Yeah. Do you want to tell a little bit about that? Because I think that was a huge power boost for us.
Agreed. It was 110K, which I had never done 110K. It was in Quebec, and which is about, I think it was 4 hours of a drive from where I live. So not too far. And it was kind of a chaotic chaotic day. My husband was not able to come on like the night before the race. It didn't work out that he could come. So I was like, well, this is going to be in my first no crewed 100K. But I think it was a huge confidence builder because it was also a ton of climbing. So it simulated UTMB fairly well. And just a long day outside climbing, and then just relying on my drop bags and what the aid stations had. So for confidence, it was huge. And I ended up like negative splitting that race, which like I think there was even more climbing in the second half. And then I ended up taking second and coming back because I just went super conservative in the first half. But overall, it turned out to be a very good race. So with
I think you were like maybe 5 minutes from first. You were just super close to first.
2 minutes, yeah.
Yeah.
And the
Oh my
weekend
gosh.
before, I had run a 50K and PR'd by 17 minutes. So it was like it was a great big week of building confidence.
Yes, yes. I forgot about the weekend before that. And so
Yeah.
that was kind of our build. We had some races in there for some confidence building. The races were sort of meant for training, but she was in such good fitness shape. She was PRing at all of these, events and placing in the top 2 to 3 in every, or I should say 1 to 3 in all of the events. So yeah, so
How
that's
much
really cool.
how much like quote unquote like base training did you guys have? So like by the time you got to like the 50K, like how much time did you spend on just like nose to the grindstone, getting in the volume and building before you started that race sleigh?
So this is actually, so I don't know exactly, Loretta, did we start in
We started
maybe April or May?
end of May, beginning of June. Yeah.
Yeah. So like
I started working with her, but she was already doing some training, right?
yeah, so I mean I've always in a training mode. But all of March I was biking and swimming because I was concerned I had a stress fracture. So like I did
Mhm,
not start running until April. But I
mhm.
was doing quite a bit of volume on the bike and swimming and aqua jogging and stuff. But really there was not a ton of running. And then my first 50K of the year was at the end of June. And then Quebec was the July 4th weekend. So
Yeah. So she already had sort of a solid list of races planned, and
Mhm.
kind of went by how her body felt, and had a good conversation with Liesel too about making sure, we weren't putting up on too much load all at once with the stress fracture, that we were also, kind of playing with and making sure she was okay. I mean, she was cleared by her doctors. We knew she was good, but we didn't want to get ourselves into a situation where it was a problem again. So we went there, and then after Quebec, she went on to do her first gravel bike ride. You want to
yes.
talk about that a little?
Yeah, it was supposed to be a race, but Vermont, we've had some really rough flooding in July, the last 2 Julys. So it ended up just being like the race directors were like, this is a ride. We are not racing, which was good. Because after Quebec, I got COVID. And I
Oh,
was
yeah, I
like,
forgot
come
about that.
back. Yeah. But other than that, we did a 55-mile bike ride out here, which is really hilly, and beautiful. Um, but yeah, it was really fun. That was the longest I've ever biked. So I'm not a biker, but
Yeah. And she did it in like what, 5 hours or something?
I
5 or
think it was five
yeah.
hours. Yeah.
Yeah.
But we like stopped, and you stop and have snacks and stuff. So
Yeah. Yeah. So that was good. It was really good at building her confidence yet again. And then the following weekend, her last race before UTMB was Moosamoloo 38 mile. Do you want to tell you a little bit about that? Because that race also went outstanding.
yeah, it was a fun race. Again in Vermont, super beautiful, hilly. There was like this, like I said, we've just had so much rain in July's in particular. The last two, it's been really wild. During this race though, there was one section where it was literally waist deep water where you were just like walking through the water. But it was fun. We have some great races out here. So and that one went really well as well. So
And then wasn't that another PR?
Well, I'd never done a 36 miler.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So
Oh.
it was the
So I
50K.
guess it was a
PR.
PR.
Yeah, it was a PR. We'll call it a PR. So, I mean, I think Reese, that really worked well because all of the races just went so well for her. You know, we were able to use them as what we called training runs, but she performed really well. Her times were
Mhm.
getting faster. She was moving while she wasn't hurting, and she was able to practice her nutrition and hydration in those events. Of course, it's a lot shorter amount of time than doing the 100, but that was kind of the way we approached it, and we continued on building up. So our goal was to say like, okay, the race is going to have about 30,000 feet of climb. We're going to try to target about 2/3 of that in your weekly elevation. And she did. She got that, especially with that combination of hiking, running, and gravel riding. She was easily getting that, and of course having some power hiking in there as well. In the midst of all of this, she was doing some pretty heavy strength training too. So a lot of really heavy deadlifts, a lot of single leg work. So she was strong for climbing going in, and we knew that, and practicing pulls, you know, on her runs too. So yeah. So and I like
How about
what
recovery after those big races too?
well,
Like my summer races?
Yeah, so like your June, July, and then like UTM, like when you got done with the 36 miler,
Hmm.
did you take a week off? Did you take a couple days off? Did you cross train through that, knowing that you have another event coming? Because that's like kind of like that's like a good race season, right? Like that's almost I don't want to say a compressed window, but when you have like one race and then 3 to 4 weeks later have another race, and then 3 to 4 weeks after that have another race, it's hard to say like, oh, I'm going to take a full week of just like off time
right,
or downtime. Like,
right.
how did you guys think about like recovery?
Yeah, so actually we used it more as we looked at it, these events as more as training. And you
Mhm.
know, she wasn't going all out in these races. These were races that she was, you know, using as her training runs. So they were actually a lot of back-to-back races, back-to-back
Mm,
weekends. And then
okay.
Musa Malou was about 6 weeks out from UTMB. So that was her last, you know, longest effort. And then we started coming down from there. So we did back off her training a little bit, especially the intensity of her training as she recovered from some of these races. And I think the key was Sam was super smart. And, you know, even when we would write a plan, she was listening to her body. So if she didn't feel like she was ready, you know, to go back to the full amount the next week, we were backing that off. So she would be able to recover.
That sounds great. So the reason why I'm asking all of those nitty-gritty details is because
Mhm.
I'm building like this like timeline in my head, right?
Yeah.
Of like, hey, like how much base training did you do at the beginning of the year when you were aqua jogging, when you were biking, when you were strength training, and like, you know, doing all of that like base work, that like easier aerobic work, you know, like just contributes more towards building this huge foundation with which then you were able to really kick it off for that couple months stretch. Just really intrigues me, especially because it sounds like we have a very similar story with, you know, like, you know, being scared of stress fractures and stuff like that. And I noticed that I've never had a good like end of year, like quote unquote, like racing season, right? Like September, October, November. Like it's never worked out for me because I feel like I do all this base training in the winter, and then by June I race like a really long race, like 100 miles. But then like I notice in the middle of the year when it's nice outside, it's really hard for me to take that like downtime to like reset that base and then peak later on in the year, right? So I think it's just a really interesting way to view that, like, hey, like yeah, you had this really like compressed racing window where you did very well, but it came because you had an even bigger portion where you were just laying the foundation, getting your body well, getting it healthy, getting those easy aerobic heartbeats. And I'm just thinking about other people that I coach where we're expecting our A performance like every single month or
Mhm.
every 2 months or whatnot. Like I feel like sometimes like you need to take a step back, have that one big race, and then take a step back, let your body heal, let it recover, and then don't just like launch right into like another huge event, right? It's like, okay, if it's been a while, like maybe we do need to take like a month, 2 months where it's like, let's just get the essentials in, like not an extreme amount of running volume, not an extreme amount of running intensity, incorporate some cross training, do all that. So that way then you can like strategically peak in like a better time when, you know, like it's a race that you really want to do well at, you know, instead
Right,
of
right.
grinding away at like one month, like every month having this race and thinking like, like I don't want to get injured. Like these little things aren't healing. Like it seems like you did a really great job ebbing and flowing with how your body felt, taking a step back, building a huge foundation, like being really specific when it came to being specific for the races. So I think it's interesting how, like our bodies are capable of like incredible things, but then at the tail end of that comes like incredible recovery and incredible mental strength to then say, you know what, like maybe this is the time where I aqua jog, which God bless you, is just brutal. It's
Awful.
aqua jogging is gnarly. But yeah, so I just want to commend you on like having the mental strength to do that. I think that's something that all listeners can take away is that, hey, like maybe if it's been a string of races that haven't gone your way, maybe taking a little bit of downtime to recover and then having a really extended period where we're not asking ourselves to perform really hard, but we're building that solid foundation with which we'll use, say, next May, next April, next June, whatever it might be.
Right. And I think, you know what, another thing that's really important to say is that while Sammy had quite a few races and she did outstanding in all of those races were like low key, low pressure races for us, right? We would
Yeah.
have conversations about it, like go enjoy your race, have fun, go play in the mountains. Like we don't care what your time is, just go. And so I feel like that was also helpful, wasn't it, Sammy? Not feeling like, oh, this is my A race, because it wasn't. All of those races were they just happened to come together really well.
Yeah, I think I'm really hard on myself, and I like strive to like push myself to, be the best I can. And I think the last year of like me pushing myself too much, like with the Lyme disease and then getting injured, it was just like I knew I needed to like step back and be like, I'm just happy to be running healthy. Um, so I think it was, yeah, just really important to enjoy each race and know that in the back of my mind that UTMB is the main race. So like I would say even like some of the races maybe I would have been more aggressive, but I was like I don't want to like roll my ankle and break my ankle. Like so I do think like I was very smart about those summer races in terms of like I probably could have gone quite a bit quicker, but I was like this is just training, which
Yeah.
was very helpful. But it's not my tendency, but I think I'm learning slowly over the years to like
Right.
feel like what is important and what is it that I really want to go after. So
Right. I agree. And I think that's part of the reason Sam came to me, right? Was to
yeah,
have somebody to say, it's okay if you're not putting in gobs and gobs of miles, or, it's okay to take this race and just use it as training. And I think that helped her take a little bit of pressure off of herself.
for sure. Yeah. Because
And
I
that's an easy thing to say. Like it's a
yeah.
hard thing to actually do.
It is.
Like I work with a lot of athletes who are like, I'm just going to take it easy. And then it's like, sure, you're going to take your 5K easy. And then all of a sudden it's like, you're PRing by a minute. It's like, what? Don't tell me that was easy.
Right. You're right. And I think it's all, like in this case, when we're talking about Sammy and her PRing, it was easy efforts. Hers happened to be, oftentimes it's not when we're PRing in races, but
Mhm.
hers happened to be her fitness level was just at such a great point, and
Yeah.
I think part of it, like you said, she came in with a good cardio fitness that was low impact, right? So now it was just getting her tissues, her body ready to handle a bigger load while running versus, trying to do things that were off. But I think now, she's also being smart coming off of UTMB and transitioning into, somewhat of a transition season. She's got a few fun races that she's going to do over the winter. And also she likes to cross country ski. So she's going to have yet another little bit of cross country ski, transition. So it's going to be a little bit less impact as well. So I think the key here for Sammy has been just having a really good blend of her training. It's kept her healthy. It's kept her mind, happy. And I mean, I think that's what's important. And the most important thing is, again, I mean, why I love coaching Sammy is she loves to play in the mountains. So I love writing her training plans and like knowing and thinking, oh, she's out there playing in the mountains all day. She must be having a great time, and she was enjoying it. And I think that's a big part of training too, that helps us get the results we want.
I think that's a good testament to a good process and a good like long-term view about progression too, is when you can stack like all of the firewood to such a degree, or you can stack the fitness to such a degree that then PRing doesn't feel hard, right? And like it doesn't happen all the time. It doesn't happen with every individual, but it is really interesting when, you know, like you help somebody train for you know, like a marathon, and they PR their half marathon en route. It's like, well, yeah, you've just gotten a lot fitter, you know? So if we can make those like, you know, it's a testament to good fitness and a good plan is when you can make those PRs feel like they're training and then incorporate into a larger like paradigm or a larger training season. So I think that's great. It definitely took like a lot of effort on both of your guys' side just to keep each other like updated with what's actually working and what's not. So I think it's great, like the coach athlete relationship of like, you know, like the better that, you know, like you guys can both understand each other, which you can obviously hear in this podcast. The better you guys can understand each other, the better then like a plan can be created, you know?
Right. Yeah. And I think the other part is, you know, I also rely a lot on Liesl. She has a really good knowledge base, with Sammy. And so, you know, now we're here moving into transition season, and I sat down with Liesl and said, okay, we need to put together a strength plan that's going to get her strong over the winter and, you know, work on her challenges, but, you know, make sure that she's really solid as we move forward into next season, because she has qualified for Boston and she'll be running Boston. So huge switch of gears there from the mountains to the roads.
I will still be
Congratulations.
goal in the mountains, though. Boston will probably be a training run.
Your
but
heart is in the mountains.
yeah. Yeah, but I am really thankful that Loretta retook me back on, because like we said, like I need somebody to say like, you're doing enough, because I will never think that I am, so I will push myself. And so it's nice to like not think about training and have just look at what you put in and do it, and just trust that it will work out.
Yep.
I can sympathize with that. There's a saying that I like, and it's that you can't read the label from inside the jar, meaning that sometimes when like we're in our own circumstance, when we're analyzing ourselves, like it's coming through this bias level of our own brains, how we're thinking about ourselves, thinking about our training, thinking about our capacity. So just to have a soundboard is great for sure.
Right. And I'm sure she probably was I know she was at one point. We even maybe had this conversation, a little like anxious still, because, you know, here her running volume wasn't quite as high, but yet she was cycling and she was, you know, hiking, and, you know, all of it was coming together. And I'm sure she was probably questioning it a little bit in her mind. And then she starts, you know, doing these races and doing so well that we're like, okay, this is a great recipe for you. It's really working. So I was excited that it worked so nicely for her as well, because there was a lot of pieces we were juggling and trying to figure out like how to get you there. And I've never coached someone to UTMB before. So, you know, I was doing a lot of research. I think I had conversations with Reese and, you know, just trying to get some ideas of, okay, what would be really a good formula for you. So yeah, so thanks for trusting me.
Great.
Yeah, and so did you. But I mean, like that's the thing, right? Like a great plan is a great plan, but like you have to do something about it. And it's one of those things where the plan, like you shouldn't live up to the plan, like the plan should live up to you. So at the end of the day, like every athlete needs to be able to say, like, you know what, like I'm feeling tired today, or I'm feeling like I can do a little bit more. Is it smart and safe to do so? Like all of those things. So yeah, it's great to hear that story.
Yeah. Well, anything else you want to share, Sam, before we go?
I don't think so. Thanks for having me. Sorry, my dog barked a few times.
That's okay. It's all good. So thanks for coming on. I would love to be able to share your story. And of course, I love working with you. So, I mean, even though we took a little bit of break where she was doing some coaching on her own, we've always been in contact for all of, you know, this time.
For sure.
Thank you so much for joining us again. Thank you for sharing about UTMB. Best of luck in the future with your Boston prep, and with your busy work life balance with everything that you got going on. And we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Right. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.